welcome to the Weed Out, where we weed out the bullshit and talk about the nonsense in our backyard. I'm Spencer Fox Peterson, along with my partner.
Hi, everyone. I'm Joanna May Booty.
Hey, Joanna, how you doing today, buddy?
I'm good. How are you, Spence?
Fantastic. And that's not very often you hear the F word from me. That F word, anyway.
I mean, fair. You do say I'm great, though, sometimes.
It's my crutch word. I'm great. You know?
It is your crutch word.
And most of the time, people don't ask follow-up questions. That's why I like using it.
You know I do.
Well, sure. But like strangers. It's also like, I'm not a big person that says comrade, but I do something similar, like one of my gas stations and stuff. And, instead of gendering anything, or making it like kind of possibly sexist, like honey or whatever, I say things like friend. Hello, friend.
Yes, that's true. You do say that. I say dude a lot, and I mean it non-gendered. I like some of my best girlfriends I start off with dude. Where's my car?
Well, it works with other men, but I think women would give me, or femme coding people would probably look at me a little cross-eyed. So that's why I like to just say friend.
If you know someone, though, it's fine, I think.
I do it when I don't know them, meaning like, hey, I mean no harm. I'm just here for I'm not going to be a problem. I'm going to be in and out. I'm going to get my soda pop.
Yeah, friend isn't a fighting word.
Yeah, it's a very like, hey, I just want to be cool. Just like comrade, like, you see people on the internet, they say comrade, sometimes sarcastically, but most of the time they mean it like, I don't know who you are, but it seems like some of our values align. Enough rambling about salutations. This week we're doing a little free form episode. It has a theme. We're going to talk about joy and what brings us joy. Time to like let you guys in behind the curtain, learn a little bit about Joanna and I, what makes us tick. And a lot of the stuff we talk about is negative, not fun, and it can bring you down. So we do value joy in any form it takes. As Dennis Leary once said, it could be a cookie, a 5-second orgasm, a cigarette. You got to enjoy those little moments. That's how you can keep going. That's the sunshine, that's the raindrops. Notice we do a lot of gardening themes here at the Weed Out. Merely the apprentice in that regard.
I am not a master, but I will take it because I am your Miyagi in this situation.
I grew up around landscaping and taking care of outdoor things, so I'm not afraid to get my hands dirty. But as far as growing food, like, I'm new, so I appreciate all your help, and that's one of the things that brings us joy. It can be really rewarding, especially the cycle of the whole thing. When the spring comes and you have to do your garden bed clean out and clean up all the debris, do some weeding, in general shaping of your little plot of land. And we're fortunate. I do think this comes from a place of privilege. So I'm sorry for anybody that wants this but lives in an apartment and don't have access to it. That's why we push for community gardens and, tenant protections, because we think y'all deserve put your fingers in the dirt too. So one of the things that brings us joy is going outside in our little haven behind our houses or at our friends' houses and, digging around the dirt. And I'm not like a big nerd about it. I'm pretty white trash. My raised bed's raised of made of pallets. It looks pretty janky, but it works. And, I kind of like it. It's honest. And I did it pretty cheaply. So there's a million ways to do things. And, Joanna has a much nicer raised beds made out of pallets. She just took more time and care.
Shout out to Caleb on that. I had a vision and a helper. So that the helper helped.
I had helpers too,
Yeah, you did. And gardening is one of those things, like you said, it breeds community because it is hard too. So like you can do it alone. I do a lot of my gardening by myself, but there are certain projects where it just, have lots of hands make the work easier. And for building the raised beds, pallets worked really well for both of us. Just, different setup, that's fine too. I think for people who don't have the space to garden, Spence is totally right. Please look up community gardens. And I used to desperately miss gardening so much whenever I lived in cities, especially when I was away at grad school and stuff. And I would always have a windowsill, like a box of flowers or something that I grew. Again, I just love gardening. And I have a huge amount of indoor plants too. But if it's something you do like having around, you could always just, if you have a window with some sun, you can grow even indoors. So that's always something nice. And there are really cool indoor lights at this point too. So if it's something like if the space is limiting you, please know again, there are community gardens in so many of the towns throughout Western Mass. And don't limit yourself to going big. You could make a flower or a lettuce box that you just keep on your windowsill. And even that could be joyful. I spent the morning in between working and doing other things, taking photographs of an iris that I transplanted from the yard I grew up in as a child to this yard a few years ago. And they had stopped blooming when I was a little girl. Like recently they stopped blooming. When I was a little girl, they always bloomed, but I hadn't seen them in years because they were overcrowded where they were. And so the last 2 years they've been blooming, and I was sending the text of it opening because it's really pretty. I'm really excited to see it. Isn't it though?
Yeah, it's cool to see the, even in a few hours, and you can like time it with how your body feels with the sun, uh, the air being warmed by the sun, heating up, and like you can like it makes total sense why the flower is opening. Um, it's great that we have fucking computers and phones that we can capture this stuff. It's pretty cool. You don't have to physically be there to see something very special but yet ordinary.
Yes, but so special, like you said. The little things, especially like these are they're they're they only bloom and are here for like a week after they bloom, and they're so beautiful, and they bring hummingbirds and bees and other kinds of cute little munchkin animals into the yard, or just around. So it's definitely one of those things, like you said, where it's so small, but it is so joyful at the same time.
Yeah, and it's a mixed bag because for me, this is one thing that's like the reality of nature. I have pets. I have a dog and now two cats, but they're territorial beings and I love them. But fortunately, rooted out many bunny nests in the years we've been where we live, and it's like it's one of those things like bunnies. Why are you building a nest where this dog is always marking his spot? I don't understand why you made your nest here. So it's interesting because the garden does attract more wildlife, which is awesome. It's so cool to like see the squirrels and the chipmunks and all that stuff, like the cycle and the birds all kind of cycling in and out of your. I just have this, it's like having a little petri dish of nature. And again, I'm not look how pale I am, everybody. Like I'm not
I felt too.
I do work outside, but I'm usually layered, so I don't catch a lot of rays, and that's probably a good thing. So I'll just look like a lobster. But there is something just so satisfying and healthy for you to just be outside. It's what we were born to do. We're also born to live in community. That's how we've evolved and become the civilization that we are. It really does come down to community. So this stuff all kind of, for me, it's like this beautiful tapestry that's a nice metaphor for what we're trying to do here at the Weed Out. And talking about police brutality is a fucking mental drain. It's a drain to listen to. It's a drain to realize that you're small and you're one person. But one way that you can kind of ground yourself, literally ground yourself, is to go touch grass. Like that saying is incredibly insulting, but it's true.
It's really annoying actually how much a 10-minute walk outside mentally helps you when you feel really shitty. And again, I'm not talking about those of you who may be houseless or hungry. I'm talking about those of us when, all of our potential basic needs are met, but we're still feeling at our lowest, and that's still so valid. But a 10-minute walk isn't going to make you feel better. Like you're not going to feel more full, or you're not going to have a home. But it really does, like Spencer said, like give you this awareness of sometimes just the beauty that is around you. Because I don't know, there's something about the sky for me too. I really find so much just from little things in nature, and like you said, even the animals. Like, I know chipmunks are super annoying sometimes because they're digging stuff up, but they're the cutest little things. They're just bouncing around happy, looking for grubs. Freaking adorable to watch.
It's important to recharge your batteries and touch grass and take a walk, because we can't help those that are helpless, homeless, food insecure. We can't advocate for them if we're not in a space to have empathy. And you do need to be at your best self to have patience and empathy. And so you got to take care of yourself before you can take care of others. It's like, what do they say when there's an accident in an airplane? Like, make sure you're good before you try to help somebody else. Anytime there's an emergency, that's like number one rule. Are you okay? Get yourself together, because you're not helping anybody if you're not able to. You're rushing out the before putting your shoes on, so to speak. So make sure you get your shoes on before you help other people. It's selfish. It's how you help. So the reason where we feel like we need to share this joy, this is how we want to humanize ourselves to anybody that's been listening, because I'm sure when you're listening to this show and the people we have on telling their stories, telling their struggles, telling their victories, and the amount of propaganda and other things that we talk about here, you would think that Joanna and I are dragged down. And one of our tools is joy.
It's true. And I would argue that even though some of the things that we talk about are negative, we do bring on people that show that we aren't alone in these matters, and that there are people and organizations that are out there that we may not know about. So I feel like with every interview, it's also a little bit uplifting. But yeah, you're right. Like, behind the scenes, and I'm probably dragged down easier than you. I don't know. I'm me, but I do a lot of things to focus on what you said, and I think anyone who is able to should. It's not selfish to take care of yourself, and to find little ways to give yourself moments of peace and literal joy, happiness. That's important. I mean, YOLO's a thing.
Absolutely. And another way, anybody listening here, we have some programming and scheduling notes. It's a good time probably to remind y'all that last week we spoke with Michael Hitchcock, organizer in Pittsfield, that there is going to be a festival on June 10th and 11th. And June 10th, Joanna and I will be there. It's this Joanna, what's it called again? The Solidarity
Economy Festival. It's on the Common in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. Please come out. The Common is a beautiful park in downtown Pittsfield. There's plenty of parking throughout like the main area and the main downtown area. There are multiple places to get food. There will be food at the event. There will be different performances at the event. We will be there, like Spence said, we're happy to chat. We may have some like stickers and some other stuff. We're working out the details fully, but please come out and visit us. And we're definitely hoping to interview on the spot. So we'll talk about that more and post more on social media. But I think our focus will be like, 2 to 3 minutes, give us your elevator pitch on what keeps you safe. And, based on what we talked about, I would hope people focus on things other than the police and the state's oppressive institutions that we know do not keep us safe. So we would love it if you came down on June 10th, like Spence said, and just, hung out. If you want to give us 2 to 3 minutes of your time and talk about something that you feel like keeps us safe here in Western Mass or anywhere, that would be wonderful. And please consider supporting and learning more about all of the organizations and people and performers that will be at the Solidarity Economy Festival, and especially Roots and Dreams and Mustard Seeds, Michael Hitchcock's and organization, which he would say it's a number of people, including his spouse, Nicole. So I would say just come out. It should be a great time. There's a splash pad even for the kids. I might get in there at some point. It's a good place. It's good people, good time.
yeah, I mean, it should be a good time at this festival. And this is one way to not feel alone. There'll be people with similar values, maybe not exactly your values, not exactly our values. I imagine we all have differences, and that's okay. But values are important, and this will be an event that people have aligned values, and you won't feel so alone. So if you have free time and you're looking for something to do, should be a nice day. It's June 10th and 11th. We'll be there on June 10th. And come by and talk to us. Give us some feedback. Tell us what you like, what you don't like, or tell us what keeps you safe or feels what safety means to you. Sorry. Tell us what safety means to you. And also, tell us what brings you joy, because it's really important to have joy. And it could be music, it could be movies, it could be hanging out with a specific person, it could be anything, whatever brings you joy. So it's just a good time to anybody listening to this, kind of like a love-in check with everybody. Like, it's okay to like find joy. Not everything has to be terrible.
And not everything is terrible. Like you said, there are things that we don't only just like gardening either. Like I am kind of obsessed with swimming. So my friends know that. And Spence and most of my friends know that at least. So for me, like if there's like an afternoon and I can go swimming even for like an hour or so, that brings me joy. Be it in a lake or a river or a pool. I just like to be in the water.
I enjoy taking our dog out to places. Seeing him run free in a field is quite magical, unencumbered by the realities of streets, roads, and people, and dogs. Just seeing him run. But also, like, I'm also really proud of him when he does really well with reactive dogs while on leash, and I feel like that's because Bridget and I worked really hard at teaching or working with him, not teaching him. He teaches us too, um learning a communication style so that we're all on the same page, so that even those like trying moments where a chihuahua off leash is charging at your 70-pound dog, which could eat this dog for lunch, you're just kind of like, all right, buddy, we're just going to keep moving, and it's just guarding its territory, and I don't know where its fucking owner is, but whatever. But like when he reacts well to that, you can't help but feel pride and joy, and that's great. It's me and my buddy figured out things that could be problematic and are triggering, and yeah, it's the little things, honestly. I mean, my life's pretty mundane. I pick things up, put things down, and then I hang out with Joanna here, and we talk gardening, we talk politics, we talk about joy. I will admit, one thing I'm looking forward to is after this recording is over, I'm going to see Fast 10, an American classic. It's me really embracing our capitalist nightmare we live in, and it's like that's how I find joy, like sardonically, ironically, like just over the top goofy shit like gives me the most joy, and it's ironically the thing I rail against the most. But it's like, bread and circuses are important. You gotta keep the masses from revolting, I guess. But uh but then I like having the discussion afterwards about like how absurd that was, and that's just me because I don't love traveling. Like, leaving my house is not really ideal. I like my routine, I like my place. So it always leads to good discussion with Bridget or my friends, and that's kind of my way of dealing with the absurdity of our culture. So if I'm canceled for liking Fast and Furious series, so be it. I will gladly do it. And I'm also a Star Wars fan and not a Star Trek fan. I'm not against Star Trek. I think Star Trek's pretty cool. I just fell in love with Star Wars.
You gotta really say that. I'm glad you clarified for the audience on that one. I am not a Fast and Furious fan, really. I've only seen like the first two. I know that makes me potentially not family to you, which is crazy because I don't know, but
No, they're spectacularly dumb. I don't have a problem with anybody being like, I am not spending time or money on those movies. They're point.
it's also fine. It's also fine to enjoy that, though. You know what I'm saying?
Absolutely. It's a mirror. It's not bringing us anything. It's just a fucking mirror. And I guess they're kind of dangerous because, in a way, it like excuses like what our culture is. But, there's also some like subversive elements to it. Some people argue about on Reddit and such about it being like, subverting what it means for men to be friends. And I don't know. I don't necessarily get that. So I don't, if they're doing that, they're not doing it on fucking purpose.
And also to those people on Reddit, it's okay if you like it, even if that's not the messaging too, I guess.
And if this gives you the power to tell your best friend you love them, great.
Yes, absolutely. Hard agree there.
Let's get rid of this toxic masculinity. Tell your friends you love them when you feel like you're telling them, and if you don't feel like telling them, that's also cool too. I'm not saying I love you is the only way, but don't be afraid to do things that are considered unmasculine because honestly, they're good for you.
And that's a good segue into another thing that brings me joy. And you said it could be a person, but for me, it's not one person. It's like all of the friends or family or chosen family that I have in my life. And like so many of my close friends and family would know that like I do push like having fun and like trying to do fun things. And that might be something really dorky, like going bowling, or I really like karaoke, or we just have food in the backyard and like have a fire. Or we don't have a backyard and we just have food together somewhere. And yeah, I don't know. There's so many other things. I love biking. I love taking a bike ride. I love fashion. It's recently been squashed a touch, but I'll get there.
We all go through like I used to be really into music and it's not that I'm not now. But I definitely focus more of my free time on listening to music, playing music. And I still like doing that stuff in my free time at home. But it's definitely I've moved on a little bit into other things. And but again, I don't doubt that it will come back. Like things wax and wane. And listening to a record is fun still, but it's definitely not something I spend a lot of time doing. So that's something I would answer 10 years ago for joy: record releases and friends records coming out, even if nobody had heard of them. It's just exciting that that's happening, or a concert or whatever. So yeah, these things bring people joy, and I think it's really important to embrace the joy with all the less than joyful things happening in the world.
Yeah, I would have said singing and even performing at one point. Yeah, I don't do that as much either. You're right. Things just change sometimes, and that's okay too. But I think music and singing or playing instruments can be incredibly joyful and fun.
It's definitely a different way to get your neurons moving in your brain.
Or listening to music. So I'm a weirdo and sometimes drive in silence. But it's a sensory thing for me, just needing silence sometimes. But I also love listening to music. It just has to be, like I find joy in music. And I think most people would say that that's a place where they can find joy.
Driving, I listen to podcasts. That brings me joy. Something I listen to music too, but podcast is probably the majority. Usually it's news stuff. This is where I get my like normie news, my NPR / neoliberal. And you say that the normie news is to my critique and ombudsmanship here. I feel like it's important to kind of track where it's going. So I do pay a little attention to that. Not that I'm listening very fucking critically. But so it's not fun. It's like work kind of. It's kind of how the Weed Out gets its ideas every week. I need to hear the normie news, and it's bleh. But anyways, there's a couple of podcasts I may as well shout out. They don't know me, but there's this one podcast by the Lever News. It's independent news journalism out of Colorado, I believe, but it's mostly national news. They definitely broke the story in East Palestine, Ohio during the train wreck and like really put Pete Buttigieg's feet to the fire. They were the ones that. So this guy David Sirota has I don't love David Sirota. He's good, but like whatever. But they have a cool network. He's just not my cup of tea. So like, but they have a show called Movies versus Capitalism, and they basically do an analysis of like the context the movie came out in, whether it's Office Space, which is kind of like a rebellious working class movie, packaged as a goofy comedy. So they like kind of break it down with a guest every week. I recommend that if anybody's into podcasts and into movies. So that's one thing that's been bringing me joy. That's not all bad, but also puts it in context. It's not just some fluff like, listening to a rewatch podcast where they're rewatching the show and just yucking it up the whole time. So there's like an actual analysis along with it. So you might learn something. It's pretty cool. And they always have different either filmmakers or actors on to discuss it. And they talk about how Hollywood works, and it's pretty cool. What was the last song you had on in the car?
The Lucky Ones by Lana Del Rey. That is a love song that I could apply to most people in my life. It's a beautiful song. It's about just her and a man, but it's a beautiful song. So songs bring me joy, yeah, for sure.
I'm not familiar. I will have to. I know who Lana Del Rey is, but I don't.
It's a ballad, so like you may not love it, but it's beautiful.
Hey, the listeners may be shocked to know that I'm all over the place with music. I mean,
I know, I am too.
Love corny B-side Guns N' Roses ballads, and I shouldn't. I'm ashamed to like some of their B-side ballads, but I do.
You shouldn't be ashamed.
Axl Rose is a piece of shit. I probably shouldn't admit liking a song he's written. I mean, he's kind of a white supremacist. He definitely had no problem saying the N-word back in the 80s. Let's just say it.
Oh God. Okay, yeah, no. But like, so for me, the part that's hard is because of my upbringing in the church until I was like 18. I really didn't get exposure to a lot of music until like high school. And so I don't know a lot of like older music unless it came out like in the late 90s on, or I somehow had exposure to it. Like I know the Beatles and like Cat Stevens, but there are a lot of things I haven't necessarily heard much of. So I can't always identify like who is that if I hear an old song, because I might not necessarily have heard it enough like other people, due to the censoring of my musical intake for a good period of my life. But that's why now there are so many artists that I think do bring me joy. And even when I was in the church, like I loved singing. Music is just a joyful thing.
Again, everybody, joy, paramount in the struggle. The world is the systems are set up against us average folks. So find your joy, find your love, and recharge your batteries and fight the good fight the next day. And that's our mission here at the Weed Out. So we look forward to bringing more powerful stories and powerful people on in the future. And this might be a good time to do some housekeeping. Remember, go to our website, www.theweedout.com. All links will be provided relevant to each episode. Follow us on social media of your choice. And just again, come to this festival in Pittsfield, June 10th and 11th. We will be there on June 10th, 9 to 5. And we will plug this again, and we will also be spamming social media. So follow us there. Tell your friends if they may be interested in the Joanna, what's it called again? The Solidarity
Economy Festival in Pittsfield, Massachusetts. It will be on June 10th on the Common. Please, you can Google it, but I'll also put a link on our website. You can go there directly. And we will, like Sam said, be sharing some more social media information about it.
And if you do come out, in the meantime, the question you should be running in your head, what does safety mean to me? And what brings me joy? And if you want to talk to us and tell us what you feel, that'd be great. We would love that.
Yeah, come say hi at least, even if you don't want to be recorded. But I would love it if you'd come say hi and talk to us for a few minutes.
Absolutely. And remember, go to our, you can find us on most podcast players, everything except Spotify, I believe. And leave us a rating and a review. That would be highly welcomed. Feel free to be honest. As always, we are active on social media, so you can always engage us there, or you can email us at theweedout.com. I mean, theweedout at gmail.com, excuse me, theweedout at gmail.com, or our website, www.theweedout.com. We're looking to set up our Patreon and other things in the future because, believe it or not, this costs money. So tips, donations are obviously welcome. We don't have anything super formal set up yet, but that's going to be in our plans in the near future. But so if you do feel like giving us a donation, our Patreon is there and you can do that. And again, if not us, the Shoestring or other independent journalists in the area, please, we rely on them too. Or if you can't do that, because obviously money's tight for at least 70% of Americans, feel free to share. Just share. Let's get the word out. Let's build a community with language we share, and we can get out the stories of the people that don't have a voice, the working class, whether it's about good things like unions forming or union wins or housing wins or things that we need to have a bullhorn about. I personally, I would like everybody in the area that, especially anybody in Holyoke listening, please be vocal, write our representatives regarding the Tenants Protection Office. It's a policy that is there for the taking. It's not perfect. It's not everything, but we need to support our working class people that are renting in the neighborhood. So support the Office of Tenants Union. If you want more information, you can definitely contact Neighbor to Neighbor. They're leading the charge. We had Katie Talbot on a few episodes ago. If you haven't heard that, we highly recommend going to listen to that episode. Katie Talbot's wonderful, but she doesn't do it alone. It's the bus money. That's fine. But one thing you can do is you can make noise for working class people in Holyoke. We need your help. Joanna, do you have any shout outs or?
Shout out to Emily and Brittany, who did give us feedback. I know who you are, and you're my friend from Pittsfield, and I appreciate you. I didn't know you necessarily were listening. And so I hope others who are listening feel free to reach out. And again, thank you to everyone who supports us. We really appreciate it, and we hope to keep doing this.
And always feel free to send us tips or episode ideas. We are a collaborative group of folk. We're also looking for somebody we can collaborate with video editing and just any other things that go into putting out content. So if you have any ideas of collaboration, we're open. No pressure either. We're just putting it out there. We need to do this as a community, so that's how we view it. If that is something that works for you, I think we should have a dialogue. So again, you can email us at theweedout@gmail.com for any of this stuff. And through community, we can really, build it. Build it, whatever it is. For me personally, it's getting the jackboots off the street. But, everybody's a little different. And as long as our values are going the same direction, it's cool with me. So I guess we can do a quick ghoulery and tomfoolery. How do you feel about that, Joanna? Yeah? You want to do it?
Yeah.
All right. So I'm going to do my media. I think for ghoulery and tomfoolery, I don't have one article. I have a trend I noticed over the last week between Mass Live, WLBLP, and Western Mass News social media accounts. For some reason, they're posting pictures of 17, 18-year-old kids at a prom, like as regular. It's like a tabloid, but for like local kids. It's really gross. I don't understand it. And also there's been a rash of memorializing canine dogs. And I would be curious This is just editorial. This is just editorial questioning. I'd be curious if there's like, is there a calendar that these PR firms? Because I feel like every spring there's some shit. There's like every department's like honoring a dog somewhere, and the reason the dog thing upsets me is because they use these dogs as literal weapons against civilians. And that's inhumane to the civilian. It's inhumane to the dog. It's disrespectful. It's not a good working relationship. I have a dog. He is a force to be fucking reckoned with. He's big, he's strong, and he's an autonomous being. There has to be mutual respect there. If you are like a cop and hold yourself like a cop, I bet those relationships with their dogs are very tenuous. Because it's built on fear, and you can tell by the way they handle them.
I think it's animal abuse basically, and
so
like it doesn't make sense because statistically, I agree with everything you said, but statistically, the dogs are just like reacting to like the trainer, or like if the dog just reacts at all, then it's like like they can check and see what you may have, but oftentimes, like 80% or more of the time, the dog is fucking wrong, which shocker, it's a dog. Not to be rude, but like I don't know if they can smell drugs. Like,
are you getting a service dog like that calibrated like you would a radar gun? You know?
Yeah, like how are they teaching it to smell cocaine? Giving it cocaine? Like either, I just think it's shady as fuck.
It's fucked.
They shouldn't.
Sorry, excuse me.
No, they just shouldn't have dogs. Like there shouldn't be dogs. Like they already have guns, tasers, cars, like everything else. Like, why the fuck do they need to abuse animals on top of it and then be like, oh, let's have a dog funeral for this canine and use it as propaganda, which I feel super bad that a dog is dead potentially, but like also, like, pets die and we don't run a fucking whole page ad in WWLP.
Or officers on OT doing a fucking, parade with their lights on for like literally that's what they're doing. They're like parading around downtown and like they're full of regalia on. They have their motorcycles out and shit. And this is in multiple towns in Massachusetts and being posted.
They did that in my town, like right when the pandemic happened. It was mostly first responders, like firefighters and EMTs. But it gave me like that feeling because everyone was out like waving and like all these like vehicles, like you said, people in uniforms. Those things freak me out and make me feel nervous, while many others seem to be
comforted.
Yeah, I actually think it's scary though because it feels like a show of power.
It absolutely is, and I think at best it's unintentional.
I know. I do think it is unintentional. I do sometimes think it is.
And it's just like, oh, this is what we can do. And it's like
I think it was to quell fears, and like especially in Franklin County where I live, it's like the most rural county. I think our town was showing us like, look, these are all the people that have been out helping you and can help you like during this hard time, but like it just sat wrong with me. And if it were for anything else, it would sit way more wrong.
Cops should not be in charge of dogs because they use the dogs like weapons, and that puts the dog in danger. And there's actually videos of the dogs turning on the officer.
Oh yeah, because they're abusing them usually.
And turning on the officer because the officer is assaulting somebody on the ground, and the dog has more of a conscience.
Is helping.
A member of his pack going out of because they're not, you don't own them.
And like you said, the officers aren't always training them.
Not to like be all hippie crunchy, but like you can't own them. They are autonomous, like you can't be their master because you're not respecting them as an autonomous being. I like to think of it as a shepherd. Like I'm just trying to keep you out of harm's way, bro. So that's why we leash up when we go for a walk in the neighborhood. It's actually for your safety. And we're going to create a positive relationship with this. Like you're going to get treats. They're autonomous beings and you need to treat them as such. And the officers don't treat anything as such. They don't treat their own guns that way. They don't treat their cars that way. They don't, I'm not saying a gun or a car is autonomous. I'm sorry. Maybe not a great analogy, but the point is they don't treat anything with fucking respect. They don't treat the Constitution with respect. They're trained not to. They're bullies. The 40% of them self-admit to fucking domestic abuse. So these dogs are probably maladjusted. Even if they were great when they were handed over to them and trained, like they morph with you. So my dog is very attuned to what I want. You know, there's a lot of things I can communicate to him non-verbally with just like how I move. You know, he's picked up on it because we spent a lot of fucking time together. So, um, it's a beautiful thing, and they're using a beautiful like a human dog relationship, and they're using it as a fucking weapon, and it's gross. And then this memorializing stuff, it's bad enough when it's a human using them as a prop. It's just as bad to me using other living beings, though they're not human. But it just shows that everything is a prop to them, and everything is a means to an end. And that's what propaganda really is. It's a means to an end. They'll let from Derek Chauvin, the one who murdered George Floyd in 2020, they'll let him rot in a jail for good, like, you know, the guy did something fucked up. I'm not saying he should rot in jail per se, but yeah, like, you fucked up. You should face a consequence. And that's a like bad fuck up. And you should probably not be friends with people for the rest of your life. Like, you might be solid. I don't know. Maybe we should cut that. But Derek Chauvin fucked up, and they'll sacrifice him. They'll just cut the arm off and move the fuck on. Look, we hold ours accountable. When that's not the truth. Their initial propaganda was that George Floyd died of unrelated. The original press release was George Floyd died while in custody for unrelated issues. They tried to just say he was on drugs. And it wasn't until this video came out that anything happened. And that's the initial outcry about 2020 and George Floyd. That's why we're so obsessed with propaganda, because WWLP Mass Live just literally reprinting cop union press releases. It's fucking disgusting.
It's like they didn't learn anything from 2020 either. And like, honestly, any person who knows, especially our brothers and sisters of color, would tell you the only reason that even like, and it's so horrible what happened to George Floyd, but it was just because it was filmed, and that someone was willing to say thank God to share that with the world, that people were finally, who should have already been awake to it, were awoken, and to some degree, to some degree.
Juxtapositioned with that propaganda release initially. That's what's so egregious about that case. It's like, no, he clearly got lynched in the fucking street, and you guys tried to literally lie, and it got out there as a lie. And that's why people were so pissed. I'm not saying we wouldn't have been pissed either way. Really, what makes it worse.
Us too, though, don't now realize that the police cannot be trusted at all. Like, if the police release a press release to you, fucking do some research before you just put that out. Journalists that still don't get it, that's unacceptable at minimum.
And there's a tweet thread. We'll link it in the notes. So this is related. This is why Gooler and Tomfoolery is about WWLP and Mass Live specifically. May 5th, I believe, there was an article with a thumbnail about a seatbelt, and there was an article saying Mass State Police are going to ramp up their click it or ticket campaign, which or whatever. It's like some bullshit where they get federal dollars by ticketing people for fucking licensing. Seatbelt failures. 3 weeks later, same thumbnail, WWLP put out a press release basically saying the amount of car deaths are because of seatbelts. It's like, first of all, no shit. It's the same thumbnail. It's clearly coming from the same press team, right? It's just a regurgitated press release. And my thing is, like, there's more kids dying from guns than car accidents. What the fuck are we doing here? And all this is going to do is lead to a click it or ticket campaign where they find the fuck out of the working class. And it doesn't stop people from not wearing their seatbelt.
Yeah, I mean, you should wear your seatbelt, but those are the stupidest. Like, this is, again, like, what? It's not even journalism. It's like, it's a bot making their news. It's like absurd.
Yeah, and so just so people can think of this who are at home. Yeah, of course we want people wearing seatbelts. Of course, absolutely.
It saved my life, and also it gravely injured me. But yes, I would have died otherwise. So please wear a seatbelt.
Please wear a seatbelt. Please be safe. Use the safety equipment as required. Whatever you're doing.
Also, drive like a regular person. Follow the speed limits. Don't drive. Drive safely, everyone.
But fining it doesn't work, especially as like, okay, reckless driving, speeding. This is a little more.
Fines are bullshit all of the time.
Yes. But with a seatbelt, really the only person in harm's way is the person not wearing the seatbelt, right? And I'm not saying that excuses people not wearing the seatbelt, but the fact that you will fine it and it can be a visual thing. So a cop can sign an affidavit saying, I saw this person wasn't wearing a seatbelt. How do you prove that you were wearing a seatbelt without having a camera pointed at you all the time? So you have to have a camera running all times on yourself to like prove you're doing something. And how often are cops going to just see a black person and their internalized bias is like, oh, I didn't see him. No seatbelt. That's one reason to pull him over. And then if they see a white person, they may let them go. And that's what the whole thing about internalized bias is, right, Joanna? Like, that's why people are biased. And so
you can't, sometimes it's programmed. It's completely programmed.
Giving cops more judgment calls is fucked up. Stop giving the refs more judgment calls. You know, speeding, it's like, okay, you were like, that's a provable offense in theory.
Again, in theory, I just think, again, these journalists at all WWLP and Mass Live, sometimes both cover actual news, but just taking these tidbits of nonsense and that typically is propaganda or just a press release directly from the police is completely unacceptable. It's harmful to the community, and it's not journalism at all. Absolutely not.
So that's our Ghoulery and Tomfoolery. I mean, we could literally rant about this for hours and hours and hours and hours. And maybe down the line, we will have more dedicated time to ombudsmanship. I mean, it's bad. It's bad. This might be a good time to also shout out the Shoestring did do a review regarding how the quote unquote ladies issue was handled in East Hampton
by the media. By these people we're talking about, because the corporate media is nonsense.
Yes. And it's it's bad. So the Shoestring has been, has analyzed that. And I think they did a better job getting the real cause of the story through their analysis than the original writers of the story.
Absolutely. They absolutely did a fantastic job, better than any media source that covered it until they did.
Right. And the other media sources acted so confused because they weren't asking anybody but one party questions. It's like, this is an obvious fucking plot hole. And as journalists, that's like rule number one. You have to show that you tried at least to ask questions from all parties involved. Anyways, so shout out to the Shoestring for doing fucking good work. They bring us joy. I'll get back to our original theme. They bring us joy. Good reporting brings us joy. So shout out to Andrew, shout out to Dusty, shout out to anybody that's doing independent journalism. Mike Crawford at the Young Jerks, really exposing a lot of the issues with the marijuana industry in Holyoke after the death of Lorna McMurray. Wow. Lorna, that was her name. And they died because of poor working conditions. True Leave out of Florida is the parent corporation. So shout out to Mike Crawford for staying on top of that and getting other workers to come out in solidarity for Lorna. So that's our Ghoulery and Tomfoolery. There is good news in there. There's places trying to hold these awful propagandists accountable. And that's pretty much it for this week. So please go to theweedout.com if you need to get any of the information. So that way you don't have to write it down. It's all there. And we appreciate y'all listening. And remember, find your joy, and it will help you power through all the bullshit and nonsense in our backyard.
Oh, yeah. And you don't even have to power through it. You just have to crawl through it if that's even enough. Take care, everyone.
Joanna, I love doing this with you. Thank you for being a part of it.
You know me.
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of your night.